no action taken on that this evening. We're moving on to then item 8.1, and I do have a speaker card for that up here. With the charter.
Yes. Yes. I knew what you were saying.
Oh.
All right.
At the end.
Oh,
What's wrong?
questions. There we go. I'm all
That's all we
done. Easy enough. There we go. Okay. So tonight we are here to present formally your 5-year CIP. We have been before you. We started back in November talking about your priorities, and I will get to that in a minute. And we brought it to all of the advisory committees, including the Planning Commission. And here we are asking for adoption of both the 5-year plan and also 2 years of specific appropriations. So just to review, this council adopts a 5-year CIP, supposed to adopt a 5-year CIP every other year. The CIP identifies the equipment, infrastructure, capital needs of the city, and identifies funding sources and establishes preliminary project timelines. The last time you all approved a CIP was back in December of 2006. That covered fiscal year 2005-06 through 2010-11. The total estimated cost back then was $380 million. Only $209 was funded. As you'll see in the next slide, the majority of this was funded through the redevelopment agency. And the annual amount that was funded in each fiscal year was between $12 to about $50 million. Here is what that plan looked like. The majority, 69%, as you can see there, was funded through the former redevelopment agency. This just shows you in each of those, I guess this looks like 6 years, fiscal years, what our capital outlay expenses, how they were broken out between the city and the RDA. For those of you at home, the red is the city, the small portion, the large bar is former redevelopment agency. So what has changed? The council reviewed a draft CIP. Staff had brought something forward back in January of 2011. As we all know, things changed pretty dramatically right after that. Further action was put on hold due to the changes in redevelopment. And subsequently, dissolution officially occurred as of February 1st of 2012. Staff went back and needed to think through what some new funding mechanisms may be to go forward and carry out some of these capital needs. We came forward last November and discussed your priorities and went back and looked at what the possible projects might be. Just to summarize what you all directed us to prioritize, we were told to look at public safety, affordable housing, the preventative maintenance, or as we termed it, fix it first, parks and open space. You all directed us to look at projects that would help create well-planned and family-friendly communities, to leverage our outside funding, improve community mobility and interconnectivity, to balance residential and business community needs, to encourage environmental sustainability through our climate action plan, and eliminate hazards. We also looked at projects that were of citywide impact. This pie chart just shows you the breakdown of all of the funding sources that we are proposing as part of this 5-year plan. You can see there grants make up a large portion of it. Some of our internal service funds, such as IT and vehicle replacement, public art, affordable housing, and general capital are both primarily funded now out of the residual or boomerang funds that are coming back through the dissolution of redevelopment. And then major maintenance is also an internal service fund. So getting to our 5-year plan, we have a total of $96 million worth of projects in the proposal. You can see there the breakdown by the different categories of what is funded and what remains unfunded in the 5-year plan. And we can get to some of those specifics. Again, this shows you the breakdown. We actually peeled out a couple of the larger projects just to show you out of community facilities what those look like, and that so you can see the large green piece for the ECCL, and then also the South Bayfront Bridge and Park. It makes up a pretty big chunk. So you have in your packet detailed project information, a separate sheet for each proposed project. Within those, we went through and had marked a project if it was mandated or required by federal, state, or local law. If it was restricted funding, we definitely, again, looked at the preventative maintenance or the fix it first. Made a note if it was leveraging outside funds, such as grant or private funds. Also, projects were categorized by whether or not they eliminated hazards. You will see projects in there that are listed as a continuation of an existing project. Some projects were considered quote-unquote discretionary. And then also in the project sheets, we have details on timing and source of all of the funds. So just getting to the first 2 years of the proposal, we are requesting an appropriation for the first fiscal year of approximately $43 million, and that encompasses about 51 projects, at least either wholly or partially funds 51 projects. In the second year, we're looking at about $18 million for a total of 40 projects. And I can get to kind of some of the larger projects that we are proposing. As you all are well aware, the ECCL takes up $21.8 million of the $96 million. The South Bayfront Bridge and Horton Landing Park is approximately $16 million. As you also are well aware, that project continues to be in the hands of the state and the appeal process. The Senior Center rehab, we are requesting $1.9 million for the Senior Center. About 1.4 to continue on with the Peninsula Fire Station rehab. About 6.3 million for the Corporation Yard and EOC. We are in the process right now of looking at the possible alternative of putting the EOC in the Hollis Street Fire Station. We are looking at actually meeting on Friday with the architect and with Alameda County Fire and looking at, there's an existing space there and whether or not we could bring this amount down. We think there could be some savings there, and so that would come forward to you later, but we're at least requesting the appropriation for this now. About 2.4 million for the annual street rehab program. Another 1.7 for the sidewalk improvement program. And the sewers, 2.5 million to continue that. As I mentioned before, we went to, over the course of, I think it was January, February, March, and a little bit into April, we went to the different advisory committees. Overall, the committees agreed with the stated city priorities that you all had. They appreciated the opportunity to weigh in on the overall plan as well as the specific projects that were within their scope of responsibility. There was some comment about the way that we had categorized some of the projects, that there was some overlap, and also requested that we include more subcategories. There was also a request kind of across the board for additional information on project scheduling, and some of the committees brought forward new program or service needs as well as individual project requests.
Give you that.
Getting into some of the specific comments, I don't know if we want to run through all of these, but we have the Housing Committee in general agreed with the recommendations we made on the affordable housing projects. They did make a request that the Adeline parcels be offered to 3706 to the project developers. for uses restricted to the site-only community garden. Recreational use or city should sell for affordable housing funding, so city and city staff agreed with that. Park Avenue District really agreed with what we had there, but they felt that the traffic signal at 40th and Harlan and the bike lane and route stenciling, if we needed to cut something out, they considered those lower priority. And then they also requested that the district banners be included as part of the public art master plan. This is going to get small for me. Aging, they agreed that the senior center renovation should be high priority, no surprise. Child Development Center agreed that the center renovation should be top priority. The Public Art Committee felt that the master plan funding should be separated out from the plan implementation funding, which we did, and they requested that we fund the public art master plan in the first fiscal year. And then they felt that all of staff's public arts recommendations were the highest priority. Parks and Rec agreed with what we had for parks. Also felt that Senior Center, Child Development Center renovations, as well as the Halleck Beach Dog Park were high priorities. I will note that the Halleck Beach Dog Park is an unfunded project in the proposal. They also agreed with the recommendation that the Housing Committee made on the 36th Street property. They did make a recommendation to reduce the funding for the Pellado Park and Greenway Design Project and to use that savings to fund the Halleck Beach Dog Park if necessary. Bike Ped requested that we add $500,000 in the unfunded category for future years for the Horton Street experimental traffic calming project. And that's to construct the permanent measures. As you all can recall, we have received a grant to design the experimental, the temporary measures. But this would be a placeholder in case the developer is not going to fund the permanent measures. They also recommended a new project, which is traffic calming at 65th, 66th, and 67th. We have added that into our list of funded projects. The Marina Committee supported our projects on the for the Marina. Public Works continue to reaffirm the priority to maintain existing infrastructure first. And then on the Transportation Committee, definitely reiterated the high priority of the South Bayfront Bridge, and then also recommended the traffic calming project. Okay, economic development, they recommended that the bus yard, which was previously estimated at about $1 million, and it was in the unfunded category, that become a higher priority. Staff has actually moved that, half of that, into the funded category in the out years. They also recommended some other projects, such as Emory Connect website redesign, mapping, conduit matching grant program, the Small Business Assistance Program, and consideration of long-term financing for large projects. We have not included any of those in our proposal here. Those are all items that will continue to be discussed as we go through our economic development strategy. We didn't consider those capital improvement projects per se. Within the Finance Committee, their highest priorities were family-friendly, affordable housing, Emery Go-Round, the bridge, senior center, the community garden. There's the Halleck Beach Dog Park again. The quiet railroad zones, I will, for the benefit of the public, note that is, I think, our highest, our largest unfunded project within the proposal. And they also placed a high priority on storm drains. Okay. So that is the overview of the proposal. It's a very large packet. Maurice is here if there are specific questions on any of the individual projects. But if you have questions on the overview, I'm happy to take those now.
Could we hear from the public?
Mayor, can I just interject?
Sure.
We have a request to move a red Hyundai, license number 4DNB466. If anybody is the owner of that car, it's blocking some access for the register of voters.
Is that your car?
It's a red Hyundai.
All right.
Okay, okay.
Gotcha.
He's paying attention in there. He's watching us.
Oh, are you in the back?
Yeah.
It's the registrar. He must be the registrar, yeah.
I park in an open space.
Okay.
Sharon Wilshire, Chair of the Public Art Committee. I just wanted to mention that I was looking through my calendar to see the date, but after the Saturday community workshop on the CIP, at the very next Public Art Committee meeting, the Public Art Committee asked that the Center for the Arts be added to things that they thought should be a priority. And the reason they sort of felt it had been sort of a given that they didn't need to say anything, but after that meeting, so that would have been at our March 13th meeting, that was, and we had understood from staff that that would be included as an addition, so I'm just mentioning that.
My apology if that was public art.
Anyone else from the public?
They, as part of their recommendations, that get moved up.
The arts.
The proposed future public art building and community center just south of us here is languishing. It's sitting there empty. If we could have a little study money for this, maybe there is some use, some cultural use that could be had by this piece of property. Sometimes art can make surprising contributions in places not normally thought of as nice public space. And it's just a way that we could move forward with this facility, perhaps in a more immediate way, that we could get some use out of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. For those of you who don't know me or don't recognize me, I'm John Flores, former city manager and president of the Emeryville Center for the Arts. I'm here with Sharon Wilshire, the vice president of the Center for the Arts, and speaking specifically on what Mr. Donahue was talking about. First of all, I want to thank you for, in these lean times, to even have funding for that project. The unfortunate part is that it's funded in the year 17-18, and we are here to request that you move that up to the more current year. For the following reasons, I'll give you some, hopefully some convincing arguments. First of all, I think the art community has been a great benefit to the city. And I think you all agree with that. Back in the 60s, 70s, when 40% of the land in the city was vacant, artists came here because it was cheap and they had good housing. And the city sponsored them, actually, in helping them purchase co-housing, the property. And a variety of other things occurred where the city has sponsored the arts, public arts, Percent for Arts. And so it is something that I think is recognized as doing good for the community. And brings in, at least for the celebration of the arts, people from the outside that don't even know where Emeryville is. Second point is that taking you back to 1996, when the city was celebrating its 100th year anniversary, we had a parade in this town. I'm not sure if you had one since. Great parade. Started right here at City Hall, a city hall that had been sold and bought back again by the city. It was an unreinforced masonry building, was falling down, couldn't live in it. And soon after that parade, the city council met and said, we're going to renovate the city hall and add whatever is necessary for administrative offices and really have a civic center block. A part of that block was to be for an arts facility of some sort. Didn't have any idea what it was at that time. But as you all know, when the opportunity came up, the city, purchased 4060 Hollis Street, the former United Stamping Company. Well, for the last, subsequent to that, there was a couple of years of the community getting together at lots of meetings of what to do with that building, Scott. And they decided that it should be an art center, Center for the Arts. At the time, redevelopment monies was available. There were some grandiose ideas. It was a multidisciplinary use that we wanted to have. Fantastic design. We were moving forward great guns, and then 2011 came, and the state eliminated redevelopment funding. So for the last 3 years,
Mr. Flores, your time is up.
and I take someone else's time.
You could have someone else speak
Okay.
if you would like.
That was much faster than I can. Well, thank you
Just
for
flew
your
by.
time.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Things slow down in retirement time.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilor. Many residents of Emeryville, as well as residents of surrounding cities and towns, and those visiting from the outside, have no idea where Emeryville begins and Berkeley or Oakland end. Because of its small size and the lack of any natural or man-made delineators, Emeryville exists in many people's minds as sort of an undefined abstraction. And all the hard work that we do to make this city great would be much more visible and cohesive if it occurred within recognized parameters. The general plan the process of the general plan brought up a lot of emphasis on gateways and identity. And the benefits, I think we would benefit greatly through gateways and monuments at some of our primary entrances, including San Pablo near 36th Street.
That happens
It's
to
that
everybody.
mouse.
Oh, it's that thing. There we go. Don't touch the pad. Or Hollis near 67th. Powell near the railroad tracks. Or Powell near Baldry. Many cities with identity crises far greater than anything that we grapple with have found a way through the use of gateways and monuments.
Something we should do with the water tower.
I don't know if any of you have seen House of Cards, that shows up in there, but they've used these monuments and gateways to encapsulate their visions and strengthen their pride and let people know that they're somewhere significant. Gateway signs at major corridors can create a bold statement and inspire appropriate development and increase property values. And they can honor history, or they can establish a vision of the future. There's a water tower on Powell, and it's my understanding that the current owners of the water tower might not be against its use, its artistic use, if it doesn't come out of their pockets. And with as little as a few buckets of paint, we could make that water tower into a great symbol of our city. Creative monument signs at narrower corridors have been used in many places and could be used on places such as North Hollis, where it would still stand out with the slower traffic and less distractions. I'd like to request an amendment to the CIP with an allocation of $3.5 million for gateways and monuments at locations to be coordinated by the staff with input from the public, planning commission, and the city council, and the designs to be selected through competition orchestrated by the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Gunkel. Further comments from the public?
Let's see, I have a couple of things I want to speak on. So, the first one is Sharon Wilshire as the coordinator for the annual art exhibition. And I'm just gonna, I'll try and be as quick as I can with this, but to foster an appreciation of the arts and artists of Emeryville and to promote our city's image as a culturally vital and progressive center for living and working. This is the mission of the Emeryville Celebration of the Arts. to produce and coordinate community-based events and programs to meet its primary goals to enhance the quality of life in Emeryville, recognize the arts as a major cultural and economic resource, to increase citizen involvement in the arts through an active partnership of our business, residential, and arts community, and to increase public awareness of the rich diversity of all forms of creative expression in Emeryville. These are our guidelines with each exhibition, and I know that we produced an event of high quality for 27 years. This has grown with the times and with technology, improved each year, remains the envy of our neighboring cities and arts communities, an event anticipated each fall by our residents, a showcase for Emeryville's creativity. There are certain fundamentals as an arts presenter: exhibition infrastructure and presentation, quality graphics, printing, and on, the sorts of things that cannot all be addressed in a virtual arena but are tangibles, and the costs for these have increased over the years. So our board is hoping that you will amend the budget before you tonight to increase our funding as in our request. This will be for the first time in 16 years. Our operating committee is a frugal, thoughtful group with arts and community as their focus, and these funds, as always, will be used prudently to maintain and enhance the annual celebration of the arts. I never know what the jury will select from our entry artists, as I mentioned before, but this year, for the first time in many years, we may have a dance component, and we're also looking forward to collaborating with the city's poet laureate with a special event at the exhibition. So these are just a few of the things that you might see new this year, and we hope that you'll consider our request. I was going to speak as the vice president of the board for the Center for the Arts on really sort of the spirit of the center. And I mean, in the city's mission statement that provides innovative and responsive services to the community to create and sustain a vibrant, livable city. Even in the Chamber of Commerce Healthy City Initiative, where they have 7 points with educational health and environmental stewardship, artistic and cultural health is also one of these elements. So to me, this is a key element of a livable city and a basic component of quality of life. Just really ask you to consider, you know, it's been unclear with things being out at year 5. Is that when planning begins? Is that when there's actually a... Okay.
Thank you, Sharon.
It's unfortunate. Thank you.
Hi, Jean Goldman. Speaking
You can
about,
lower that.
Oh, thank you. For short people, thank you so much. I'm here to talk about the Center for the Arts also. I'm president of the Celebration of the Arts Advisory Council, and I just want to reiterate what John Flores has said and in the letter that he sent to the council. So we're requesting that you revise the capital improvement plan to advance the appropriation of $3.9 million for the Emeryville Arts Center to 2014-2015, so we can move that up and begin moving on that. We're afraid if it goes out too long to 2017-18, that the funds that are available with the rising costs and so on, we won't be able to renovate the building. And we think after 27 years of searching for a building every year, that it's time for a permanent home for the Celebration of the Arts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Anyone else from the public?
I just wanted to note here, remind everybody about how the Transit Center has received capital improvement monies, some $8.4 million. And it's got a $4.2 million state grant, and then the rest of it is a tax increment funding from the city, which is totally inappropriate. This is a project that our own planning commission deemed is not sufficiently high in public benefit to even allow happen, let alone fund with our own tax increment financing. So I think that was really, really inappropriate. I understand Mr. Rich Robbins, the CEO of Wareham Development, the beneficiary of this money, is friendly with a lot of council members, but I just think it's really bad policy, bad public policy, and I don't think we should be spending our money on things that have so little public benefit. I agree with our planning commission that it just doesn't have enough public benefit. Now I wanted to speak for the Horton here tonight for the Horton Street Bike Boulevard. We're still waiting for a bike boulevard on Horton Street. As it is right now, Horton Street is not a bike boulevard. It's a regular street with purple signs and some stenciling. And how do I know that it's not a bike boulevard? Well, I know because the city of Emeryville tells me it's not a bike boulevard. For it to be one, it would have to have less than 3,000 vehicle trips per day. And it's got way more than that, anywhere from, last traffic count, anywhere from about 4,200 up to over 12,000 vehicle trips per day in some areas. So we asked, the Bike Ped Committee asked for some money from the Capital Improvement Fund so that we can be sure to have traffic calming as the bicycle pedestrian plan that you all voted on, have that be implemented. And so we've been waiting for almost 10 years to get a bike boulevard on Horton Street, and it's the premier north-south travel route for bicyclists. And we don't have a bike boulevard there now, and we won't have one unless we do traffic calming to bring down the volume to less than 3,000. And so I just think it's really important to have one north-south bicycle boulevard in Emeryville. I think we should make sure that money is set aside for that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Asher and council members. Bob Cantor. I'm President and CEO of the Emeryville Chamber of Commerce. I'm not going to finish John Flores' statement for him, but I just want to reiterate that we were very big fans of the Arts Center here. I personally attended lots of the meetings. There were a lot of public meetings with the schematics. They were wonderful. It was a very exciting project. And we stated publicly that what better symbol could there be for the transformation of the city from the old industrial city to a new modern city taking a new path than to take an old industrial property and transform it into an arts center. You couldn't be a better use for that. I would also note, I don't know the structure of every city in California and won't pretend to, but in many cities, their arts programs are administered in the economic development department of the cities. And that's because there is an economic impact for the arts. That's very common. That's where it's usually housed, or often, not for every city, certainly, many of them. The arts benefit us. Not only do they beautify the city, but there is an economic impact. And one last comment regarding the gentleman who spoke about the monuments and the arches and things. We had a wayfinding program proposed here several years ago, as I recall.
You had to bring that up, Bob.
Public Arts Committee.
Sorry, which I thought was quite exciting, and we supported it, and it could be a public art project. I'm not sure what happened. I thought, and the Chamber of Commerce, not just me, our whole chamber thought, this was really a good project, and it was along the lines of what the gentleman spoke with. They were more monuments, not necessarily the arches like the Welcome to the City, but different markers especially on the eastern and southern end of town, and not sure what happened to that, but there were schematics of them, and they were really good. So it's been proposed before. Maybe it can be re-examined or rebought back again. Thanks.
Anyone else? Steven, Ken?
We killed that one.
Yeah, I had a few comments. First is about the Art Center. I did serve on that committee, and it was an exciting committee. I think it was great. Lots of enthusiasm. I really think we should move up the funding for that. It's really important. And the other one is about the traffic calming. I'm not sure what the urgency is because I don't know what the problem is. I really think before we move forward with that, we should have a public meeting about that and invite everybody's opinion. I don't think a lot of people know about that. And if there's ever a project I saw that would need an environmental impact analysis, that is certainly one of them. You don't even know what impact you're going to have about doing that. You have approved development there. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but I don't think we know what the impacts are, and I don't know what the urgency is to fund it. I don't see any traffic problem on Horton Street. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Anyone else? Questions, comments from council? Jennifer.
I'm very grateful to the staff for putting together such a comprehensive CIP plan and for thinking it through so well and looking at all the different pots of money and how we can creatively reconstruct funding for these important programs in our city. It's in 2011 we had a false start looking at this, and I feel like we've addressed it, or the staff has come back with a very well thought through plan. And what's remarkable is that it doesn't all happen immediately, but everything seems to be able to be funded except for the expressly unfunded pieces, which we can hopefully find funding for at some point as well. I also think it's very ambitious. And I think for our staff, capacity to oversee this number of projects is a real concern to me. I don't think we should make false promises of what we can achieve. I know that we are staffing. We will have greater capacity than we have over the last year, but if we could, we would do everything right now, and I don't think we can. So I just want to be mindful of that as we consider it. And I think this is the better place, perhaps, to discuss item number 48, which is the ECCL North-South Pedestrian Path. I made comments earlier. If you'd like me to repeat them, I'm happy to do so. That was my plan, to speak at this time, and maybe it makes more sense in this context, so I could just do it very briefly.
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So my question is, when is phase 2 planned for ECCL, which is when the bike ped path is right now being considered? Staff's response was, we really don't know. And secondly, the bike ped path is fully accommodated in the current plans to be completed in phase 2. The reason it's not being completed in phase 1, as I've heard it, is because there's no funding to do so. It was estimated at about $725,000, which is what's in the SIP plan as unfunded project. But there's also been concerns about safety that have been raised. And so I just wanted to understand better from the school district if the funds were available to build it now, would it move forward? It is in our general plan. There is another source of funds. This project is also listed on our transportation impact fees, which we have not yet adopted, but will be considering in the next few months. And so to proceed with the path, it seems to me that we need plans to do so, we need money to do so, and we need to be able to schedule it so that the pool isn't unduly impacted. We know how hard it's been not having our swimming pool this last year. So my request to council is just to prioritize the bike ped path into some sort of funding, whether it's through transportation impact fees or through the SIP program, and to move forward on the path once the funding has been found, and not wait until phase 2, to basically have it as a separate project that could be completed. A quick conversation seemed staff seemed to think that it could be built while school was in session, that it wouldn't have a huge impact on the facility. I don't know if the school district would agree with that. We could work around pool closure and schedule, et cetera. So I think I want to reiterate how important I think it is. I've heard people say it doesn't go anywhere. I want to say that we're trying to build a wonderful community center and a wonderful new school. And if you leave out a bicycle pedestrian path that provides access through a super block, you are missing an incredible opportunity to make a statement about Emeryville and what we value, which is interconnectivity, parks and open space, family friendly, environmental sustainability. To me, all of those are addressed, and I would like to see a commitment from council to include it and find funding. It could be that it will cost much more than the $725,000 that's slated here, according to staff. We really don't know what it would cost. But I just want to reemphasize that as an important point.
Mayor Asher, I'd like
ahead,
to
Nora.
respond to Councilmember West on her request. I believe it is firmly the bike path is firmly set in phase 2, and we have an extraordinarily complex project with the ECCL. We've struggled with it for over 8 or 9 years, and we're really coming up to a time crunch now. And I have to kind of agree with Councilmember Brinkman on your remarks that you couldn't support going forward with the ECCL unless the bike ped is in there. Our challenge here is we want to make sure that the ECCL moves forward, that we have these children, these students, able to be in a structure September 15th, I think, is very ambitious, but anything, I could not support anything else that is going to delay or perhaps slow down the rebuilding of the pool and the gym and the progress of that development. So I couldn't support your request. I feel we've reached a real agreement on this council that they will move forward in phase 2 with the bike ped path. But this ECCL project is very hard fought. It's still got a long way to go, and adding one more straw onto the top of this, I could not support.
I also want to make a comment. I think that the question of the bike ped path has actually been a very close question. And when we've come to vote on it, it's been a close question. And so for me, it's very important for me to break up that super block. I was so glad when the proposal for the ECCL came up to the Planning Commission, and they said that you had to make space for it in order to accommodate the bike path in the future. And I'm really grateful for that. Like you, I worry about phase 2. I think that one of our goals should be to make our general plan come alive, right? And hopefully within our lifetime. And phase 2 will be something that is many years out. It's a situation where I imagine, I'm trying to predict here, that the city will have to step in order to support the school district if we want that project built. When I look at the CIP, I'm a little bit nervous about the margins we have to work with here and how many projects we have in front of us. But I certainly think that the traffic impact fees, future development, and the increasing need for bike infrastructure would be something that I would want to look at. But like you, the bike ped path is very important to me. So I understand that piece of it. I'm not sure that I want to commit the money necessary out of the CIP, right? That would be something that I would want to look at for the TIF. Ruth, or?
Yeah, I'll weigh in on Jennifer's request. The mayor mentioned it was a close vote. I was the swing vote. To bring.
You feel you're the swing vote, yeah. Okay.
And given that, let me just say that I think that having some circulation through the schoolyard is important. But as a former Emery Village resident, I'm not very happy with it being right along there on the other side of their property, because when I lived there were a lot of security problems, a lot of vandalism by youth and other things. And I understand the plans have been made about how to maybe protect Emery Bay Village from vandalism and burglary and whatnot, but I haven't seen them. But the idea of circulation and putting in a finer grain of circulation in our city is a goal that I ascribe to. But if I look at $750,000, and I think that maybe there's ways to do 2 or 3 grains of sand that make a finer grain circulation system for that amount of money, that I might want to spread that around and create what I would consider to be more public good around in different parts of the city. So I also do not support taking money from some other project in the CIP. We have far too many demands on our meager resources to put that bike path in any faster than what we have time to discuss security and safety concerns and have conversations with the other stakeholders about it. So I just want to say that I don't think the timing to try to push this one through as a pet project makes sense, because there's too many other things to weigh. And I'll just remind you that there was a project near and dear to my heart that isn't even on the CIP anymore, which is a lot less expensive.
What's that?
Which is opening up a dam gate that would connect 55th and 53rd Street. So, and that would be a whole lot less expensive, and that would add a grain of interconnective, that we need.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a good street grid system in town.
Well, and I don't imagine you're going to find a lot of, I think you might have support for that on the council.
Well, it's not in the it is
right.
not on the CIP this time.
No,
So
it's not.
we're losing other bike ped options, right? So
No, if I could vote for the 53rd to 55th Street path, I would, but I can't.
I know
'cause
you're
I live there.
confused.
But
So
I'm also surprised it's not in the CIP. Yeah.
So I just don't think it's right to push for one particular thing when there's so many other things that we could bring back, or that we could do more for that amount of money in other parts of town and spread it around.
It's interesting because the Christie Avenue path, which we're moving forward on, isn't breaking up a super block like this would. But because we've received a grant to do it,
Yeah.
and it's considered part of the Bay Trail, it's a regional gain, it seemed like an easy thing for us to do. It's a wonderful thing for us to do, but to do it in one place where at least bikes can get through and pedestrians can get through, but we're improving the experience, and then to compare it with this is an interesting contrast, I guess.
Well, always going for what can be funded is
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a picture. It's pragmatism, and it's low-hanging fruit, and all the rest of
I
that.
agree.
I also, if the school district felt more secure with this, I'd be more interested in going along with this. But we heard loud and clear that the school district didn't want the path because of safety reasons.
Exactly.
So for us to force the path on them and then say, okay, you have the path, now you have the safety problems. And this from a man that has had his house broken into 3 times in a short period of time. Let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff happening out there that you have to be concerned about. So I'm really concerned about the safety of the kids, and I think that needs to be priority number 1.
Okay, we beat that to death. Can we move along?
Good.
Mayor Hatcher, I have a,
I don't think you have support for that right now, Jennifer.
No, but when we do get to the transportation impact fees, we can talk about
Perhaps,
that again.
yeah. Okay. Other comments on the CIP?
I have a comment, since we have 3 very illustrious people here speaking on the Art Center. I do have a couple of comments on the Art Center. It's pretty clear to me that unless we have a public-private partnership with this Art Center, we're not going to get very far. And my question to your board is, has any effort been made to interest some rich megabucks person in like the Leisure Center in Walnut Creek? That's what I'm really looking for. Has your board considered any kind of actions like that, or any plan to go after these rich people?
Well, the board, and Sharon, you could correct me or add to this, has been somewhat dormant since 2011. Since redevelopment funding brought it down from a really multidisciplinary art center down to an interim art center, really, something that's going to rehab a blighted building for the most part and make it useful for the community as a community space that would house various art programs, permanent home for the celebration of the arts, but also a place where lectures, movies, and other activities, community activities, can occur. So the answer is we haven't done that. That's not to say we cannot do that.
Is it something you might consider?
Definitely consider. I think it's difficult to do.
Well, I think that, one of the things that we ran up against, and I guess now it's even more so, is is just knowing about the absolute certainty of that building being the building that we were, it's hard to raise those kinds of funds for capital programs. We kept bumping, we did bump up against that because
you can't go out and solicit that until you know you have a building or something to sell, quite frankly. But I do think even when that occurs, if you did approve an earlier funding, I think it'd be very difficult to get any major contribution, like the Leisure Center. It would be very nice to have, yes.
Well, my second question is, have you presented to the city manager some concrete plans of a really scaled-down operation?
We have those plans. I'm not sure we handed them to the city manager, but the plans have been done. We have a couple on the board. We have Andy Getz and Rich Robbins, who are very involved in development, as you might know, that have looked at the building, and that's where the figure
That's where the number came from.
$3.9 million came from, was after they're looking at it with their engineers to figure out what can be done for a certain dollar amount, a lesser dollar amount than we initially had.
But the council here, we don't know what we would be buying with that 3.9. It's in the plan. I know it's in the out years, but before I strongly support this. I strongly support doing something with that building, but I think I have to have a little more information before I push it up into the 15, 16, or 14, 15.
Well, we do have that, and we can get that, what we have, to the city manager. But there's one thing that I would like to add, and it's really the cost of construction is going to increase every year, as you can imagine. And the fact of the matter is that the funding for this project is already in place. And you're generating maybe 1% interest a year, if you're lucky, 1%. But the money comes from Pixar, which is already dedicated to this project. And the second part of it, a good portion of it, is your general capital money, which was really redevelopment bond, from what I understand. I may be wrong on this. Redevelopment bond money specifically for a number of projects, including this one. So I think the money is available. I may be wrong on that, and I could be corrected. But if the money is available, I don't see why we couldn't move it up. We would get it built, subject to your review, the city's review of the project.
Yeah, Mr. Biddle, could you clarify? I'd like to understand what the amount is from Pixar, and then my understanding was that the bond money is tied up with the state still.
So first and foremost is the property, which we do not control. So that is part of the long-range property management plan, which is still before the Department of Finance, and that will take some time to work its way through. So I think you have to keep that in mind. There is approximately 1.4 it's in the CIP of monies that were provided by Pixar that are dedicated specifically to the project. Then there's approximately $3.8 million of bond funds that the City Council and the successor agency recently approved a funding agreement to allow for the transfer of those bond monies from the agency to the city that could then be used on projects that were identified in your implementation plan and that are also located within the Shellmound Park redevelopment project area. That agreement or the funding for that was approved on the ROPS for 1415A, which starts July 1st. The agreement was approved by the Oversight Board. It's sitting with the Department of Finance. They have essentially 45 days from, I believe it was May 2nd that it was transmitted to them. So we will know sometime this month whether they are going to object to that agreement and the transfer of the money from the agency to the city. So assuming it is, they approve it, then as of July 1, the agency can transfer the money to the city, the $3.8 million, and then those funds are available, as I say, for projects identified in the implementation plan. This is one of those, and that's also located in the Shellmound Park redevelopment project area, which I believe it is. But I think your staff has probably earmarked it for something else, and I'll shut up.
Yeah, he's correct.
Yeah.
So the additional bond funds have already been proposed to be used for the South Bay Front Bridge.
Right.
Because the
what is it, 11.2, Maurice, that's tied up right now is insufficient to build the bridge. So we need the additional $3.5 million to do so. The $2.5 million on top of the Pixar money for the Art Center, coming out of the General Capital Fund, really is coming from the quote-unquote boomerang dollars, which are, you know, for all intents and purposes, general fund dollars. It's just subject to the policy that you have in place right now, which is the residual dollars that are coming in every 6 months from the county. You all have your policy to set 75% of that over into capital.
Right.
It's really just general fund dollars, but that's what this is.
Mayor Asher, I have another question for
Go ahead, Nora.
Michael. When is the long-range management plan going to be solidified and in place? Because we can't touch that building.
No,
we
don't have that property.
So what, you know, that's another unknown in this particular property.
Well, the plan was submitted to the Department of Finance.
February.
Was it February? Yeah. And there is no time frame in the statute by which they're obligated to make a decision.
Unconscionable.
And I think one of the key issues or one of the key hang-ups is this notion of as it relates to South Bayfront Site B, is this notion that because it's being transferred to the city for redevelopment, that the city would be obligated to enter into compensation agreements with all the taxing entities, an obligation that is clearly not provided by statute and is perhaps subject to some cleanup legislation that's pending. It's in the legislature right now to make it clear that that isn't an obligation. So if the Department of Finance comes back, as they have with many other jurisdictions, and said, we're going to approve your plan on the condition that you require the city to enter into a compensation agreement related to Site B, then there's going to be a question to the council that we would discuss in that room over there, whether we want to adhere to that, and you already know my position on it. I think the Department of Finance is dead wrong. I'd share with you that in the legislative record relative to the passage of AB 1484, which was the amendment to the Dissolution Act, there is a passage from the Department of Finance that makes it very clear that compensation agreements are not required. And yet here you have them taking a different stance now when they're actually implementing these long-range property management plans. So,
Well, Mayor Asher.
Yes, Nora?
Just to summarize, we all want this Arts Center, but given the problems that are involved here with the state and with the ownership of the building, I think the proposal by staff to have this in the out years is a reasonable one. But in the meantime, I think I would hope your board of directors would be working on concrete proposals that the council could take a look at, and if things change, to come back and talk again. But right now, I would support what the staff has in there for the out years.
And I understand that.
I just said, I mean, I had a question. I know that in both Sabrina's narrative for the CIP and for the budget, and also Charlie, in yours, there was a mention of things that you were going to be doing in the next 2 years, and it just mentioned, among a list of other things, and working on cultural arts facility. What does, I mean, I'm just don't know how active that is or what that really means. I'm just trying to think. That was kind of a question too about does everything start on the city side as well at the 5-year point, or is there?
We don't know the answer to that yet,
Yeah.
exactly.
And one last point. I mean, we have been dormant really for 3 years, and another 4 years being dormant. I'm not sure the state, one, will allow us to do that. But you've noticed, I think, that there have been several board members who are no longer on the board as
Right.
they've left because it's, in their mind, not going anywhere. So I'm cautious about that, and I'm not sure what the future holds for the ECA board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I have just one more comment. This is a wonderful document, and the process that was taken to develop this CIP is, I believe, just outstanding. Everybody that wanted to had a chance to get their input. There is one very, very small project that keeps popping up, and that's the dog park down at Halleck. You know, we're talking about 40, 50K. A very small project. It's going to have a very large impact on a corner of our city that could use a little assistance. And I would urge the council to consider pushing that ahead to add some. You know, this particular part of the city is going to be undergoing some, if all things go as they propose with Sherwin-Williams.
Right now?
They're going to have
yeah.
a lot of construction, a lot of upset, having a dog park there, and then perhaps hooking up down Wood Street with an extended dog park, working with West Oakland, WOCA. If we could start with that small parcel there, improve it, have people use it, it's going to improve that area where we have substantial problems right now.
I would support that.
So,
Yeah.
do I have support there?
I would think so, yeah.
All right, we got support for the dog park.
Okay.
That's all I have. The rest of it, I think, is well done.
I want to give a nod to Brad's presentation for the gateways and the monuments, and it's like, you're right, it can make a real statement and real difference, and I don't want to lose sight of that. It's in terms of being able to talk about it in future years. I go to the Laurel District in Oakland. I see a gorgeous kind of arch over MacArthur. Same with Diamond District. It's, you know, there's it actually does a lot to kind of make a place, like there's a there. So I do support that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I do too, and I wonder how you arrived at the 3.5 million, or if there's some maybe less costly alternative to that we could consider as well. Some way to. Do you want to explain that?
It was just off the top of my head as far as.
Big,
I mean, literally construction cost on a couple arches and a
Sure.
monument and whatever we end up, doing at the water tower.
Yeah.
Around, that would be a safe amount, but.
Yeah.
But maybe we could do something a little bit scaled back
Yeah,
that might
scaled
still make a
down.
statement.
Ruth, are you considering a placeholder?
Well, sure. I mean, I don't.
In the out years,
Yes.
because Maurice has his hands full in the
Yeah.
next.
No, I don't see how we have the means to pursue this in the immediate future, but
a placeholder for the out
but
years.
I do think it really adds a lot to the community
yeah.
identity.
And I like the idea of incorporating it into our public art master plan. You know, that
is a
is
good
something that
idea.
has been asked to be funded in the next year or so. And if there's a way to address the gateway and
Good
identity
idea.
as part of that, I mean, Emeryville is about art everywhere we go. So let's incorporate it.
Yeah.
I just have one comment. There's just little words of warning. There's going to be a lot more railroad traffic coming through here. And I see that we're not funding anything as far as the quiet zones, but if you happen to go down through West Oakland, you'll see that the railroad tracks are being expanded, and there's going to be a lot of activity here in the next probably couple of years, and it's going to be a very noisy city here. So,
Well, Kurt, if I could respond to that, I think if we want to work on those quiet zones, we have got to pull in Richmond, Albany,
I agree.
El Cerrito, Berkeley, and Oakland, and work together as a sub-regional to get some moxie. Just going up against the railroad by ourselves is not going to happen.
And it impacts us all, and there should be other funding sources beyond our CIP.
Exactly.
That you talked about the port, right? And
Yeah.
also MTC funds, perhaps, that could work towards
So
that.
perhaps we can start that effort.
yeah, maybe
So
start a
just
committee.
at the first ad hoc committee meeting of the Goods Movement Plan as part of ACTC, the consultants talked about grade separations, and I said anywhere you put in grade separations, you need to add and/or quiet zones, and so they made that change because just the engineering isn't feasible to do grade separations everywhere. You know, we'd be digging in the mud to try to do that. So through the goods movement, the countywide goods movement plan, that's looking at the port and all these other things. It's like, you know, that's a community sweetener as a mitigation measure that we can make sure is front and center in terms of the expansion.
Ruth, what's the representation on the Goods Committee?
I'm on the committee.
But how about Richmond, Albany, El Cerrito?
Well, this is Alameda County Transportation, so.
How about
Commission.
Oakland, Berkeley on
So,
there?
Yeah, they are.
And Albany?
No, Albany doesn't have any at-grade crossings.
Well, maybe that may be a place where you could pull together Oakland and Berkeley on this.
We're talking.
Good.
Yeah, keep us updated on that. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
There was one other item in the staff report at the bottom of page 5 and top of page 6, which is talking about the South Bayfront Bridge and Horton Landing Park, and it asks for council direction of whether to put the project on hold until the litigation is all settled, or redirect general resources to start the project in a timely manner and put other projects on hold potentially until additional funding is available to fill in those funds. And I just wanted to check in with the council. To me, I think if we know we want to go forward with the South Bayfront Bridge, which we've heard from several different committee inputs and we've heard it here at council as well, I think it makes sense to direct staff to move forward on that project even before the litigation has been settled, if we think that there's a way to back fund that project.
But what would we have to delay if we move forward on that?
Well, I'm going to turn to staff because I think they thought that through.
In looking at the timeline of, and Maurice, you can chime in on the timeline on the project, but just in terms of even if we start now, we're in terms of the negotiations with the railroads and finalizing the design, all of that will take quite a while. Maybe you can kind of comment on that.
Yeah, I estimate at least 9 months to a year of prep work to get it to be able to bid. The plans have been sitting on the shelf for a few years now. We want to make sure that the codes haven't changed, so make sure that our design is still up to code, as well as we need to work with the railroad, get agreements there. We need to get right-of-way acquisition easements with Novartis and Madison Marquette. And very time-consuming is a grade separation approval from the PUC. So that's probably about a year's worth of work, 9 months to a year, and then we'd be able to bid it out, hopefully. So
there would be
the cost to fund that work.
So there would be the cost to fund that work. I think you had 700,000.
well, I put 100,000 in the first year, and then the rest of the money, assuming we got all the approvals we needed. Then the last time we were talking to the railroad, they wanted at least $500,000 up front just to start the project. And so, you know, I don't know that you'd want to start paying that out until you had all your project funding.
Yeah, because you're buying essentially a window of time.
From the railroad.
Not only are you buying a permanent aerial easement, but you're also buying the right to sort of interact with them for a period of time to actually construct the bridge. And without knowing that you're ready to go, you're just throwing money away if you
Right.
enter into that.
But there are other places to move ahead so that we won't have to wait that entire year. I mean, we already waited that year and then it all ended, right?
Right, but if we
Almost.
get our PUC permit approved, that would mean we have our contract with the railroad, which would mean then that we would have paid them for the window of time to build the bridge.
So that doesn't sound like a smart thing to do now.
Correct.
But there are other things, as I understand it, that could move this forward so that when we do have that,
Plan.
Well, the design's complete, so unless we're ready to build it, there's really not a whole lot to do.
I thought you just said we need to update the design.
We need to take a look at it. Hopefully, there's not a whole lot we're going to need to change.
Okay.
So what we need to do is negotiate easements to build it with Novartis, and then permanent easements with Madison Marquette for connecting to their garage and constructing the ramps on their property. So those are the things we would do if we knew we were going to have the funding to build it right away.
So is there a point in proceeding as if we're going to have the funding, or am I hearing now a different thing, which is we just need to wait?
I think it's, I mean, I guess the other thing I was going to ask Maurice is what year, what was the code that was in place when the plans were built? And so they have to be updated to current code, and then by the time we actually put it out to bid, are we into another code time period?
Every
as
3
well?
years.
Right.
So that's,
It's not really the building code, it's more the bridge designs, and have there been any change in seismic, codes and that kind of thing? So hopefully not.
And if I may, to Councilmember West, I think and I'm sorry if I phrase this in a strange way in the staff report, I think kind of part of the point I was trying to make here was also, in the event that we would lose the case with the state, there's a deficit of about $8 million that we'd have to come up with. And so the question was kind of, are there projects, and maybe this is the point you're making, projects that we have in here now that we would want to pause and basically hold on to that $8 million. In looking at what Maurice put forward for the next 2 years, I now feel much more comfortable that we would be, just at the pace that we're going to move and looking at all of our fund balances, that we would be able to shift things around within that 5-year period and come up with that shortfall.
Okay.
So I think we're okay.
Right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor Asher, I'd like to move the adoption of move the resolution to adopt the CIP.
Second that.
I have one question for Maurice, and here I'm looking at the street tree program, and one of the things that I've been wondering about is if you've ever thought of working with, or if you know anything about Urban Relief, which does tree planting for our neighbors. They employ local youth, and then also they have, my understanding is that their contract with cities allows residents to go and purchase trees in order to plant on their properties.
So I've heard of that organization. What we really need to do is a comprehensive inventory of what we have, how many trees we have, how many tree wells are open. So if we knew that we had a project to plant trees in a certain number of tree wells, and we wanted to do it with working with that group, we could definitely organize something.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, just curious.
Call the question.
Motion and a second. Anyone opposed?
And this is including the Halleck Beach Dog Park.
Yes.
And how are we handling the idea of putting some money potentially towards the markers or gateway or others? How would you handle that?
We could put that in as an unfunded item, just so it doesn't fall off. And as a placeholder, we could put the 3.9.
I'd also like to suggest
You'll have another crack at this in 18 months or 2 years from now.
I'd also like to suggest that Ruth's Gate become an unfunded item on the CIP. I would like to see it on there.
That's my pet peeve.
The Pickle Works Gate.
Is there a third
Is there a
person?
third person that would like
Me
to see?
too.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a connection between
Unfunded,
55th
but
and
let's have it on there, please.
unfunded.
Yeah.
Third of the cost of some other projects.
Okay, anyone opposed with those additions? No? Okay.
We have a number.
Move the funding for the CIP.
Okay.
Move the resolution.
I'll second
I'll
it.
second. Oh.
Okay, anyone in opposition? Nope, okay, that passes as well.
Do you want to stand up and take a stretch break before the next item?
Oh, that's
Do we
a
need a
good
little
idea.
break?
I need a break.
Okay.